Greetings, this is Michael with Impact Reviews, where we review equipment for the long-range shooter. This is actually our debut episode, so welcome to the channel and welcome to the review. Today I thought I'd start with a review of a recently acquired pair of binoculars. These are the Steiner T1042Rs. Let me give you a look at the box here. I should say the Steiner Tactical 10x42Rs. I haven't seen a lot of reviews done on this particular set of binoculars, and so I thought it might be good to start with something where there hasn't been a lot of work done. And the way this review is going to work is going to be relatively in depth with five different sub-chapters, I guess. I'll begin. The first chapter is just going to be a statement of the purpose, the reason why I particularly wanted to get this set of binoculars, what I've been using them for, what kind of functionality I've been trying to leverage on these binoculars, and also the kinds of conditions that I've been using them in, weather conditions, environmental conditions. Secondly, I want to go through the product specs just so you get a sense of the broader picture of what kinds of features this set of binoculars is going to have. And then what I'll do is a side-by-side comparison only in terms of features with similarly priced competitors. And so, as you might have guessed by the letter R in 10x42R, this set of binoculars actually has a Milliradian Reticle in it. That's one of the main reasons I got these. And so what I'll do is I have a little Excel spreadsheet, and we'll set this set of binoculars alongside the competitors that are similarly priced and do some comparison in terms of features and characteristics. Fourthly, I have a couple of field tests set up to confirm the accuracy, the precision of the reticle itself. We have a daytime optical clarity comparison test set up, and then we'll also do a low light optical clarity comparison test set up. And I have a couple different binoculars that I'll use as side-by-side comparisons, just so that we get some sense of how this particular pair of Steiner binoculars, how it lines up with respect to some really high-end binoculars and then also some really low-end ones. So that'll be the fourth will be the field test, and that may be of most interest to some of you. And then the fifth subchapter will just be a summative section where I'll offer my evaluation of the binoculars based on a 12-point rubric that I've developed, and this will evaluate everything from the kind of my sense of their ruggedness to their value with respect to other binoculars with similar features. So that's the goal of the review today, and it's going to be a little bit in depth, and I think that's from my perspective that's really valuable. It's very difficult sometimes to get a sense of the quality of a set of glass when you just hear terms like the glass is amazing or I love this set of binoculars. So I'm trying to give a little bit more depth to this review so that you, if you're interested in a set of binoculars with a Milliradian reticle, will have a kind of better understanding of at least my experience with them. Let's get started with the review. In the second part, I want to give you some sense of how and why I decided to purchase these Steiner Tactical 1042Rs, some of the uses that I've found for them, etc. The first thing that I found was really useful is the Mill reticle functions as a great backup in case the laser rangefinder goes down. Normally in field conditions when we're out hunting, we would typically use these Leica geovids with laser rangefinders, and they're awesome. They've never gone down on us before, but if that were to happen, then one could potentially use the Mill reticle on the binoculars as a backup rangefinder. Of course, you'd have to know a couple things, right? You'd have to know the Mill ranging formula. You'd have to know if you wanted it in yards or in meters. You'd have to know, most especially, a kind of you'd have to know in advance a dimension of the target. For example, its height or its length, or the dimensions of a particular body part or something like that, or segment of the target. And so, assuming you had all that information, these could function as a great, albeit somewhat rougher, right, range finding option. There is, by the way, a really nice, if you're not kind of familiar with that terminology of the mill relation formula or the mill ranging formula or anything like that, if you're not familiar with that terminology, then there's a great article by John McQuay, who has the 8541 Tactical channel. Go to his website, 8541tactical.com, and there's a really nice range estimation article there. So this can be used in place of a laser rangefinder if it goes down. It also functions as a more kind of field expedient spotting scope in case you don't want to take out your huge spotting scope with a mill reticle on it. You can very quickly just pop these up if you need them quickly, and provide wind calls or shot corrections if the case may require that. I typically use a US Optics field observation scope, one of those 15 by 40 by 60s, and it's fine, but it just takes a while to get set up, right? To get the tripod out, to get it set up on the tripod, and if you need to take a quick shot, then this and provide follow-up or whatnot, or wind calls or holds, then this can be a lot faster than getting the spotting scope set up. Now, there are a couple of hunting-specific applications that I've kind of discovered as I've worked with these in hunting applications. The first is that the mill reticle actually functions as a kind of a rough way of comparing animal sizes. So let's just take an example. Let's say you're glassing a herd of deer a couple hundred yards away, and you see buck A on the left side of the herd and buck B on the other side of the herd, and you wonder, well, I want to compare the width of the rack, the height of the rack, that kind of thing. The ranging reticle can help you do that in a rough kind of way. Of course, you have to keep in mind that the animals need to be kind of equidistant to you. You can't have one at 200 and 100 and expect the reticle comparison to be, that's not going to work. They have to be generally at the same distance. But if you're, if that situation is true, if it prevails, then you can kind of compare animal sizes. We had a chance to do this in this last hunting season during javelina season, when we were spotting for a group, one of our hunting party that was stalking this group of javelina, and we were able to tell from about 600 or 700 yards using the spotting scope to kind of compare which of the pigs would be larger, and that was an interesting little exercise. So it can be useful in that regard. The second hunting-specific application has to do with helping a person find a target, especially in a thick brush kind of environment, or in the case where the animal's coat might be very well camped, might look very much like the environment, which is typical, right, for animals. And so if the shooter is having a difficult time finding that animal in the scope, what you can do is set these binoculars up on a tripod, make sure that they're firmly on there with some kind of clamp or something, or tie it up on there with a bungee cord. You secure those, and you put the reticle on the target exactly, and then you let that shooter look through it, and that allows them then to see, first of all, to identify the target and see what it looks like using the crosshair as the precise center point, but then also to locate it with respect to other kind of distinctive features in the environment. So maybe there's like a distinctive rock or a tree, and the person can then see, this target is near those things, and the kind of crosshairs at least give you a reference point where you can place those precisely on the animal. So that could be helpful. I know I've been in situations where maybe my dad or my brother see the animal, but once I get behind the scope, I have a hard time finding it because maybe the animal's behind bushes, or maybe just part of it is exposed. The binoculars can potentially help you overcome that problem, and again, in what may be a somewhat more field expedient way. Additionally, if you have a shooter with a mill reticle on their scope, and you have the binoculars, you can help them locate the target, saying, for instance, okay, the deer is three mils to the right, and 2 up, and you can use those grid functions to communicate with your shooter. So again, a lot of different, I think, hunting specific applications here that maybe not what these were designed for, but I found that they can be useful for those particular things. Now what we're going to next, the next step in the review is I want to look at the product specs. We'll go straight to the Steiner website and look at the product specs that they list, and we'll talk about those in some detail. Alright, in this segment of the review, I want to begin by looking at the features of the Steiner Tactical T1042R, according to the website, to the Steiner website, steineroptics.com. And then what we'll do is we'll look at some of the competitor binoculars, look for a bit about, look at those specifications, and then we'll do a direct comparison across a couple different, looking at a couple different of the features and seeing where the Steiner Tactical 1042Rs line up with respect to their competitors. So if you need to track this down, go to steineroptics.com. You'll see they have their binocular pull down or binocular tab up here. Go to the tactical, don't go to military, go to Tactical 1042R. It's right there at the top. And keep in mind also that they have a version of this pair of binoculars that is without a reticle, so that's the 1042. What we're reviewing today is 1042R. Just a couple basic things. Magnification 10 power, weight 26.7. We'll do some comparison on the weight. Oh, by the way, it's a fixed 10 power. Okay, so there's no this isn't an adjustable up and down the magnification range. This is simply a fixed 10 power. Weight 26.7 ounces. Width, height, etc. And then they list the MSRP here. A couple things to draw attention to. This is, as you know, a reticle, binoculars with reticle, or the reticle in it. And I thought it would be important for you to know that while this is certainly a true and accurate representation of the reticle, I actually think it doesn't quite do justice to what it's like to look through the lens, and that's just the fact that this is kind of a digital representation. The lines here are very thick, and you might think, just looking at this representation of the reticle, wow, those lines look like they could potentially obstruct view of a target or of a landscape that you might be looking at. I found that is not actually the case at all. The lines are there and you notice them, but in no case have I ever felt that the lines actually obstructed what I was trying to look at. So I thought that might be useful for y'all to know. As you consider this pair of binoculars. So let's go down and just look at the product specs themselves and see what they have to say. So it is, as you can tell from the straight cylinders, this is a roof prism design. They say extremely lightweight, compact and streamlined, easy to pack, carry, etc. Okay, all that stuff. But like most really modern binoculars, this one is a roof prism binocular. The lenses they call high definition optics, and so I was interested, as somebody who's really a big Steiner fan, and especially of the German-made material, I wanted to know where they were making this glass and where it was assembled and all that. So I actually posted a question. Let's see, I think it's somewhere down here. Okay, yeah, excellent set of binoculars, been using for a month or so. This was a while ago when I wrote this. Where's the glass made? Is this US made, German, etc.? And then I say I'm working on this review. In fact, the one that you're watching right now. And this is the response. The shot glass is ground. So it is. Whoops, what's going on here? There. The shot glass is ground and polished in the original Steiner manufacturing facility in Bayreuth, Germany. So for those of you familiar with kind of some of the major manufacturers of glass, the Schott Factory is really renowned for making remarkable glass, and I've used that glass before in a Steiner military scope and found it to be just spectacular. And so I was encouraged to see that Schott was also producing this. And if you're kind of interested in learning a little bit more about the different places that make glass, some of the major, kind of factories and facilities where glass is made. Just do a bit of Googling, look up Schott. You'll find that it's very, very reputable and has a kind of a great reputation for making excellent glass. So high definition optics, like many other binoculars in the modern day, it is pressurized nitrogen, and this is simply to prevent fogging. It does have a fast close focus. That's just talking about the central wheel here, right there. I should say that the independent lenses can be focused here. Each side can be focused independently, and then this one in the center provides just a coarser focus. So that's what they call it, the fast close focus. So it's the center. That's the central wheel. They say that it's made out of military grade rubber armoring. Okay, well, that's fine. I have found that the rubber coating is very, very durable and very. It seems to absorb shock that might come to the binoculars through just kind of everyday use, getting banged around in a backpack or whatnot. I've been impressed with this rubber armoring and its resilience. I've kind of accidentally banged these binoculars against a whole variety of things, and I haven't noticed any kind of chipping in the binocular or any erosion at all. It doesn't even reflect scratches, really. So I've been really happy with that, and it's very easy to grip. I'll talk a little bit later about the ergonomics, but the rubber armoring that they have and the kind of aggressive, as you can see, texturing around it really makes these a kind of nice in the hand feel. Now, most of this stuff up here, the roof prism, the nitrogen that's used in the optic prevent fogging, or the fast close focus, a lot of this stuff is pretty standard for modern binoculars. But one thing that is a little bit interesting and that I think they see as somewhat innovative is this click lock system. Let me just read their description first, and then I'll describe it in my own words. It attaches and releases a neck strap or harness instantly with push button ease, and it's designed so the binoculars hang straight and action ready. Okay, what they're talking about is, do you see these ramps, or I guess, how do you call them, these little wedges right here? And then over on this side, those are the insertion points for the click lock system. On a normal, quote-unquote, normal pair of binoculars, the attachment points for things like a harness or a neck strap are, as far as I can tell, usually attached directly to the metallic body of the binoculars itself. I'm thinking of Swarovskis I've used, or of Leicas, even a pair of Tascos. It seems to be attached somehow quite directly to the body, the hard body of the binoculars. In this case, though, Steiner will include in the packaging these plastic inserts that also have a loop or a kind of slit at the top where you can insert your neck strap or harness attachment points, whatever it might be. Now, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I have to say that I was a little surprised that these were plastic, and it's not. They don't feel so durable that they couldn't break. Now, let me say this. That's a long-term concern that I have about that click lock system, and they haven't broken at all. They haven't failed. One potential concern you might have is you might think, well, because it's push button activated, you actually press this little area right here, and that will release them. It's pretty tough to release them, which to my mind is a good thing, because then they're not going to just bump up against like your tripod or something and fall out. Nothing like that. They're very, very. You really have to use a fingernail to kind of activate them and release the click lock. So that's good. There's a very positive click. They don't wiggle at all. Nothing like that. It seems to be well engineered. I guess I'm just concerned about the fact that they're plastic, right? And that maybe over the long term that plastic will lose its integrity and its ability to just to be durable. So we'll see what happens. Again, I don't have any evidence that they're going to break, nor have I seen any reviews indicating that they are somehow flimsy or easily breakable. So we'll see. Just a concern I have. It is, I think they consider this to be something of an innovation on their part, but whether it's a positive one, I'm not sure. And to be honest, none of the other binoculars that I've used really have a problem hanging straight or being quote-unquote action ready. This seems to me like a solution that is in search of a problem. I don't really see the problem that this click lock system is really trying to solve. I can't see it. Maybe you all do, and if you do, then let me know about that. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to compare the T1042Rs with what I consider to be its kind of main competitors. And let me give you just a really quick glance at what I think those main competitors are. Actually, the first one is from Steiner itself, and that's the M1050R 10x50. These are, I think, in many ways the kind of iconic Steiner binoculars, and this is the military version, but they also this particular kind of configuration is also they also have marine versions and police versions, etc. So this is very, very iconic Steiner, and these have been used in military capacities, police capacities, etc. So that's one competitor, and I'm just giving you a survey right now of what the other competitors are. We'll look more specifically at the features. Then the next would be the Vortex HD RT. Let me actually zoom this out a little bit. There we go, you get a better view. So these are the Vortex Viper HD RTs. The RTs apparently standing for Ranging Reticle. These are, as you'll notice, discontinued, but I decided to include them anyway because they're still readily available. I believe you can find them on Amazon and on some sporting goods stores. So I thought, you know what, since people still have this as a purchase option, might as well include it. The last one, here we go, is the Leupold BX2 Tactical 10x42. And you'll notice these are all generally within the same price range. The M1050Rs are admittedly pretty pricey. These break the $1,000 mark, whereas the Viper HD RTs and then the let me get the 1040. There we go. The 1042R's MSRP at $747. So the 1050s are admittedly kind of on the higher end, but the Vortex, these MSRP around $799. The Leupold $649. So let's let's open the spreadsheet here, and what I want to do is just compare these along. What do I have? 6 different points: weight, magnification, the lens quality, the glass quality, the objective, field of view at 1,000, MSRP, and then reticle design. Well, let's just begin with the weight. And what I did is, for each of the categories where there is clearly a kind of best in class, I marked those with yellow. So as an example, let's look at the weight. Okay, so these are all in ounces. The Steiner's 26.7. The M1050s, these are really these are a beast. These are 35.3 ounces, the heaviest actually out of all 4. The Vortex 27.2, and then the Leupolds, which are, at least if lightness is your standard, if lightness or weight, kind of lightweight is value to you, then the Leupold BX2s beat all of them out, and really by a long shot, by just about 3 full ounces, beat out the Steiners. The M1050s again are just a brick, 35.3 ounces, and they're also, I guess you could also raise the issue of ergonomics with these too. I have heard people complain that after a long day it can be a little bit awkward to carry around such a wide pair of binoculars. It's just a different kind of design. So in any case, so weight, the Leopolds clearly went out there. Magnification, there's no winner here because they're all the same. They're all fixed 10 powers, non-adjustable in that regard. They're fixed power. Now the lenses, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell from from factory descriptions, which lens is actually going to be best. But this is the language that they use. Steiner calls the 1042Rs high definition. Again, I mentioned earlier, these are made in the Schott Factory in northern Bavaria, very reputable. The 1050Rs they consider multi-coated. They do not call these high definition. I imagine that's the eve of high definition glass. I think came long after these M1050s were designed, and to my knowledge, I could be wrong, let me know. The M1050s have not been upgraded to any kind of high definition glass. Now Vortex Viper also has HD. They refer to it as high density as opposed to the high definition in Steiner's, and then Leupold just calls them simply multi-coated. You know what, I didn't assign a kind of winner here because this language is difficult to quantify, and I don't own all four, and so I can't really make that kind of judgment. The objective lens, this is where I think there's a bit of an issue of preference here, but both the Steiners and the Leopolds have 42 millimeter objectives, whereas the M1050s and the Vortex Viper HDs, they have 50s. You're going to have to make a decision on your own whether you think the additional 8 millimeters is really results in such a superior binocular. And so you're just going to have to weigh that on your own. But in terms of if size is sort of the goal, size of the objective, then of course the Vortex Viper HDs would win, and so would the M1050s. I suppose it is worthwhile and impressive to note that the Vortex Viper HDs, they do have a larger objective than the Steiners, but without too much of a weight gain, right? 26.7 ounces and 27.2. That is, I suppose, worth noting. Field of view at 1,000 yards. Now this is untested. These are the numbers given by the manufacturers themselves. The Steiners, 317 feet. Again at 1,000 yards. The M1050Rs, 392. The Vortex Viper HD's 278, and then the Leupold BX2's 267. So the clear winner there is the M1050R. That's again the kind of classic Steiner military binoculars. They seem to have the best field of view at this particular range, but a close, maybe not a close, but a clear second is the Steiner 1042Rs, the ones that we're, of course, reviewing in this video right now. So it's 317th, and the others drop off pretty steeply. 278, third place is the Vortex Viper, and then 267, the Leupold. So the Leopolds would have, at least according to how they report it in their numbers, the Leopolds would have the smallest field of view at 1,000 yards. Let's look at MSRP. Now, MSRP, of course, isn't the same thing as what you can actually buy it for. The Steiner 1042Rs, MSRP 747. You can easily find them on Amazon for $649. I think I mentioned earlier I got super lucky, and somebody had returned a pair without. It sounded like in the description there was maybe a scratch on the housing. And so I thought it was an Amazon warehouse deal, so I thought, well, I'll order it, and if the lenses are scratched, I'll just return it. So I got it in. The lenses were not scratched. It just seemed to be a little bit of wear and tear, barely even noticeable on the rubber housing itself. I think I got them for I definitely got them for under $400. They were about $350, so that was a steal of a deal. I think typically you can find them for around $649 on Amazon and on eBay too. The M1050Rs, you can find these on eBay for hovering at around $1,000, so really not too. So there's a little bit under MSRP. These still seem to be in high demand for whatever reason. And Vortex Viper HD, so $799 MSRP on Amazon. You can find for just about just a little bit above what the Steiners are.
it's kind of proportionate, the difference between MSRP and the actual sales price. And then finally, the Leupold BX2's MSRP $649. Whoops, missing a dollar sign there. Still in dollars, $649. You can find these at the lowest price on Amazon for $489. And those are not, as far as I remember, the $489 was not like a used price. That was where you can find them new. So it seems that the Leupold BX2, if you're really on the tight budget, but you still want one of these reticle binoculars, the Leupold would be the way to go. Now, as a final note, I want to look at the reticles, because they all have different reticles. Well, I should say the two Steiners basically have the same reticle. I think I've pointed this out here. I see very little difference between the one used here on the 1042R and then the one used on the M1050. As far as I can tell, there's no difference at all. Maybe I've overlooked a small detail, but basically they're the same. And it's important to note that the crosshairs go right through the middle of the lens, and so it's as if you are looking through a rifle scope, right? It kind of mimics for the spotter what the shooter might be seeing through the reticle. Oh, there, I can give you a little wider view. Now the Vortex Viper HDs, these have kind of an interesting reticle design, and I cannot seem to make this any larger. I was trying earlier, but the crosshairs offset. Here you can see kind of in the lower left quadrant, the lower left section of the lens, and they have this interesting little feature right here. Those are, if you can't tell, those are humanoid type design. They almost look like an IPSC target, and they are a kind of coarse, rough, quick ranging reticle option. So you would presumably put these over the head and shoulders of a person and be able to tell in a rough way how far they are. Now, they do list these in meters. Notice that. Keep that in mind, from 600 to 300 meters. It's really, this is an interesting design. It reminds me of I think Fin Accuracy's MSR reticle, which is really a fabulous reticle. I had it in a Steiner M5-25 military 5-25. Really interesting feature. The Steiners are actually only lines, though, just straight horizontal lines, and they're kind of stair-stepped. But it gives you a chance to kind of use the shoulders as of a humanoid target as a kind of rough ranging reticle. But so that's what that is. Kind of interesting, I suppose, especially for military law enforcement. And then you have just kind of a standard Milliradian reticle offset again in the lower left part of the optic. Now, the Leupold is very similar. Let's see. And these are, just as a reminder, these are all Milliradian. Loading now. Okay, there you again. I can't get this to be any larger, but I think you can get the general idea. Here you don't really have a crosshair. You just have a kind of 90-degree L shape. And this is, I guess, of all of them, this is the most minimalist of the reticles. And if that's of concern to you, if you want to see as much of the field of view as possible, then this might be your winning option. I think is interesting. It's again minimalist, and but still gives you the option to measure things. So really interesting. So that's all the reticles. Again, the Steiners are kind of the same. Nothing really different between the two, not that I can tell. The Vortex is a little bit offset, still a full crosshair, so maybe that's valuable to you. And then the Leupold have this, what they call the Mill L. I'm just assuming that has to do with the shape of the reticle, but all Milliradian. So, this is just kind of, like I said, this is just the side-by-side comparison. It's a way of situating the features in the Steiner, which is really our focus for this, alongside what I consider to be comparably priced competitors. Maybe the M1050 is not quite comparably priced, but it's still within a couple $100. So I hope that's helpful. We'll move on to the next part of the review, and then at the end of the review we'll do a kind of summative reflection using a 12-point rubric, another kind of rubric similar to this one but with a little more detail about where the Steiner Tactical 1042R, the kind of final set of grades that we're going to give to it.
At this segment in the review, I'd like to give you some sense of the Steiner Tactical 10x42R's optical quality. And one of the challenges of doing optical reviews is describing the quality of the glass, because terminology like this is high quality glass or this is the highest quality glass can be helpful in some cases, but many times it doesn't really give a person a strong sense of what kind of quality you can expect or what kinds of differences one will find when comparing a particular set of binoculars across across the spectrum of low quality to high quality glass. And so what I've done here is I of course brought out the Steiner Tactical 10x42s, and I want to compare these with three other binoculars, two of which I think are on the higher quality end and one of which is on the lower quality end. So I'll be comparing the Steiner Tacticals to the Swarovskis. These are 15x56s, really nice set of glass. Then the Leica Geovids 10x42s, and that's the laser range finding one, as you can tell from the button here. And then this is just an old pair of Tasco Futuras that we've been using those for I think over a decade now. They're pretty old, and I don't even know if they're still available, but those are 10x42s. And the idea is in this lineup of binoculars to say, okay, where do the Steiners line up? And I'm going to do two particular tests. The first one will be to see how well each of these four is able to, how well you can see the mirage. And so that will be, of course, particularly important for reading wind. And so what I'll do is I'll look through these four and describe to you, to the best of my ability, what the mirage looks like through each of these four pieces of glass. So what can you expect to see mirage-wise from each of these four pieces of glass? What are some of the differences, etc., things like that. And then the second test that I'll do is to pick out a target at 500 yards, a clearly defined target, and then describe to you through each of these four sets of binoculars what that image looks like and what some of the differences are that you can expect. And I'm going to do that both in full light conditions right now. It's mid-afternoon, and then I'll also do the same test on another day in low light conditions. I think that would be a helpful comparison and contrast. So that's the idea. It's just a way of not of giving you a completely objective evaluation of the glass, but of giving you a relative evaluation based on what I see through these four binoculars, which I think are, I think these two, like I said, represent the higher quality, and these Tascos definitely on the lower quality, and definitely a budget pair of binoculars. And it will be interesting to see how the Steiner lines up with respect to these four. Now we're on to the next stage of the review, where we're going to compare the four pair of binoculars and how well they do in terms of detecting mirage. Of course, an important factor in long-range shooting. And I do apologize for some of the wind background noise. The wind is gusting up to maybe 11 or 12 miles an hour. And just so that you have some sense of the temperature, we are running today about 82 degrees. And like I said, the wind is gusting at about 11 to 12 miles an hour, so you will hear some of that in the background. So what I'm going to do now is I have a steel target about 1,000 yards downrange, and I'm going to set up the four binoculars and look through them and describe to you, compare and contrast some of the differences that I see as I line up these four. So this is about the third time I've done this. I already have some sense of what to expect, and also I just wanted to make sure that describe to you what I see. Now, if you've ever looked through this kind of binocular, they have a kind of coating. Not sure if you can see that, but it actually results in a very bluish kind of image. It's almost a kind of a teal-colored greenish. Actually, greenish is a better way of describing it. And it is, as I look downrange again at a black steel target about 1,000 yards downrange, it's really clear that there is mirage, but it's really hard to see the lines or the contours of those waves. You can tell that the air is moving, but you can't really tell whether the mirage is at an angle, whether it's horizontal. All you can really tell is that there is movement in the air. So that's what I see when I look through the Tasco Futura SEs. And again, as I look through them, I can tell there's movement. I spent some time focusing these to my eyes before I started recording, and the target downrange is also very somewhat difficult to see. It's hard to see the outer edges of it. So let's switch now from the Futuras we'll switch to the Swarovski. These are the Swarovski 15x56s. And so there is, one qualification of the four. This is the only one with 15 power, so that does make something of a difference. Well, already off the bat, you can tell that the lighting in comparison to the Tascos there isn't that green kind of tint to it. The lighting is much more natural as I look through the glass. And one of the things a couple things strike me about this particular pair. One is that the lines on the Mirage are much easier to see. The waves in the Mirage are much easier to see. It's easy to see that the lines of the Mirage are moving horizontally as opposed to, for instance, at a 45-degree angle. It's really clear to see that. And keep in mind that this is a 1,000-yard range, and the way that this is all set up, the wind acts very differently down there because there's a canyon that kind of cuts across the range. And so the lines on the target itself that I'm looking at are very, very clear. You can tell, even in the midst of the heavy mirage, you can see the target really clearly. You can see its color really well. Everything looks very natural. But most importantly, for this particular test, the lines of the Mirage are very easy to see in comparison with the Tascos, which again, it was easy to tell that there was mirage, but difficult to tell in what direction it was moving. One could simply say that the air was disturbed. But with these Futuras, with these Swarovskis, it's very, very easy to see and to discern the kind of movement you're getting from the Mirage. Let's move to the Leicas. This is a pair of Leica Geovids, actually my dad's, and this is kind of his go-to pair of range finding and hunting binoculars. And yeah, so according to this, the target is 1032, 1,032 yards. There is a little bit of a tint on this glass, but it's not to the same, a bit of almost a greenish tint when you look through these. But and so it doesn't look quite as natural as when I look through the Swarovskis. But one thing in which these Leicas are comparable to the Swarovskis is in the ability to see those really crisp edges on the target, again the 1,000-yard target, and also I would have to say that in terms of discerning mirage, it's easier for me to detect it through these Leicas to see the lines and the angle of the mirage. It's easier for me to see those through these Geovids than it is through the Swarovskis. It's a very, very minor difference. Both of them make it easy for me to see the mirage, its direction, its angle, the way it's disturbing the air. But I do have to say that it seems a little bit crisper and a little bit clearer for me through these 10x42 Geovids. So now let's go to the let's switch over to the binoculars that were actually the ones we're actually reviewing, these Steiner 10x42Rs. And of course, the major difference between the 10x42Rs and then the other binoculars we've looked at is that this one has a reticle, has a Milliradian reticle in it, kind of optimal for longer range shooting. The other ones do not, but at this point we're just kind of comparing glass quality. So what I'm going to do is throw these up here, and again looking at the same target and looking at the Mirage. Let me begin with the 1,000-yard target, the target at 1032. Again, it's a black steel target, and I do have to say that along the edges of the target, they were much crisper on, maybe let me say a little bit crisper on in the Swarovskis and in the Leicas than it is in here. With that said, though, it is still very easy to see that target. The light is very, very natural. I don't see any hue or coloration as I look through the binoculars at all now, and we're of course in the middle of the afternoon. I don't see any of that at all. The image is really crisp. Like I said, there are some subtle differences when you look at the edges of the target. They're not quite as crisp, and I can't adjust them to be any crisper when I do these minor adjustments. They're just slightly a little bit more blurred. The edges of the target are a little bit more blurred. But with regard to the Mirage, these Steiners are every bit as clear as what I see through the Leica and the Swarovskis. Again, looking only at the one's ability to discern the Mirage through this glass, I see no difference whatsoever when I look at these, when I look at the Swarovskis and the Leicas and then the Steiners with respect to finding the Mirage. I see them as completely comparable. So I think that's high marks for me. It's really important, of course, to be able to see that Mirage. And when I compare it, especially on the lower end, to these budget binoculars, these Tasco Futura SEs, when I compare these two, it is worlds of difference in terms of one's ability to discern the Mirage, its contours, its angle, and the specific lines in the glass. Far better. These are far better than these budget end binoculars. And then I also, of course, mentioned that the color issues. I don't have any issues with the Steiner in terms of providing, in terms of there being kind of a color in the lenses. And I said, like I said, when I compare to the Swarovskis here, the 15x56s, or these Leica Geovids, these are very expensive. Both the Swarovski and the Leicas are well over $2,000. When I consider that these Steiners you can get for well under $1,000, you can get them for under $600, and I actually, as I mentioned earlier, got these on Amazon used for about $300. When you consider that they are comparable, at least in terms of a measure or of a discerning the Mirage, that to my mind speaks to their value. As you can tell, we're now in some lower light conditions. It's actually 7:20 in the evening, and so the sun is completely gone down. All you can really see in terms of is residual sunlight is kind of pinkness on the mountains. And so what I want to do here is give you the results of the low light clarity test, and there were two things that I was looking for. One was the clarity of the image. What does the target that I've selected downrange actually look like through the 4 different binoculars that I've been using for comparison? And as a reminder, those are the Swarovski SLCs 15 power, the Leica Geovid HDs, of course the Steiner Tactical 1042Rs, and then the Tasco Futuras. And so what I've done is I'm testing first for optical clarity. When I look at the designated target downrange, when you compare those four, which one provides the most detail, which one communicates those details most clearly. And then secondly, I'm interested in the light transmission, at least in how that affects the eye and how the eye perceives that. And so I've been comparing those four binoculars over a couple-day period of time. I come out around this time and test it out, and I want to see how much light is being transmitted through, so which of the four actually provides a more illuminated image, or an image, are there some that are darker, that provide a darker image than others? So issues like that. So basically two things: optical clarity in terms of looking at the target itself and seeing details, and then secondly, light transmission. So which of, as I compare these four sets of binoculars, which one is sort of at the top, and most importantly, where do the tactical 1042Rs land? Let me begin with the light transmission issue. And so when I say that, all that I mean is, when I look through those binoculars, which of the four provides it provides an image that is most illuminated, or maybe better put, that is closest to what I see in the natural, with my natural eye? Which one gathers the most light and then allows me to see that light through the lens? And when I line those four up together, you may remember that on the lower end, the Tascos, they have a kind of coating on them. I'm not sure what it is, but it really darkens the image. Even in daylight, it provides a kind of aqua blue color hue to all imagery, and that was definitely noticeable in these low light conditions. It was noticeably darker as I looked through there, and then I would look up with the naked eye and just compare the two. It was noticeably darker. The Leicas also have some kind of coating on them that does make the image appear darker than it actually is to the naked eye. So when I put them up, and it just as an example, I was looking at some mountains that are miles and miles away, but I was looking at them while sunlight was being cast on them, so they had a very pinkish color. And when I look at that pink through my naked eye, it was pink and very vibrant. When I looked at it through the Leicas, it was a little bit dimmer. And then when I looked at it through Futuras, it was really, really, really dim. The Swarovskis and the Steiners, they provide the most natural lighting, or when I look through them, it looks like it most replicates, let me put it this way, most replicates what I see through the naked eye. And in fact, in the case of the Steiners, when I looked through them, it was almost as if the image was a little bit brighter, a little bit more illuminated, as if they were gathering more light than I might even with my natural eye. And so, and the same was true with the Swarovskis as well. And so I would say, in terms of just the kind of light gathering, light transmission, and the how illuminated the image looks, at least to my eye, the Swarovskis and the Steiners were virtually indistinguishable. I thought the image that they provided was very, very easy to see. The light transmitted very well. The image appeared to be illuminated in some ways, whereas the Leicas and the Futuras, they did have a kind of darker hue to them, and did not appear to my eye, at least, as to gather quite as much light as the Swarovskis and the Steiners. Again, keep in mind, this is just my own experience, right? I'm not an optical expert, but I'm just trying to communicate what I see through these. Now, in terms of the clarity issue and kind of how much detail I can see on the targets in these lower light conditions, I chose a target that's 475 yards away. It's an electrical transformer, and so it's just kind of this gray bin. And again, the Leicas deliver big time, even though they don't seem to collect as much light, or the image doesn't seem to be as illuminated as with the Steiners and the Swarovskis. You can still see detail better. It's a subtle difference. So, for instance, there's a sticker on a yellowish sticker on the on the transformer. I can see the edges of that sticker and kind of distinguish it from the rest of the body of the transformer much more easily through the Leicas than through the Swarovskis or through the Steiners. There's subtle differences. I'd say it's better, but only by a couple of degrees is another way of saying it. The Swarovskis, even at 15 power, I still see some of the detail better on through the Leicas, the detail on the pole, on the wooden pole. You can see some of the details more clearly, and some of the details on the transformer itself. So the Leica, for sure, in terms of capturing those details, to my eye, it seems superior than the Swarovski SLCs and the Steiners, but only by subtle degrees. I'd say the Steiners and the Swarovskis, in terms of seeing those details in these low light conditions, they seem equal to me. Of course, the Steiners have a little, or the Swarovskis have a little bit more, 5 more power magnification, but even still, the details when I look at those smaller granular details, the Steiners and the Swarovskis, I can't really tell the difference between them. The Tascos are, as you might imagine, provide an inferior image, not only in terms of the light transmission, but also in terms of the details. It's much more difficult to discern details through the Tascos in comparison to the Steiner, Swarovskis, or the Leicas. So those are the results of the low light test. They're not perfectly objective by any stretch of the imagination. This is what I see in my eye over a couple day period of testing these in these lower light conditions. Just wanted to give you a little summary of another test that I ran, another field test I ran earlier today. And the test is meant to confirm or deny the accuracy of the Milliradian reticle. And the test itself is something that the setup is something that I came across in John McQuay's article, which I mentioned earlier in the review, on the 8541 Tactical website, where he suggests if you want to test the accuracy of a reticle, what you can do is create a kind of 3.6 inch grid. Is 3.6 inches is what is 1 milliradian at 100 yards. That's what 1 mil will be at 100 yards. And so I have 3.6 inch horizontal lines and 3.6 inch vertical lines, and I tested each of the subtensions, and they were in fact entirely accurate. I didn't see any that were outside of what you would expect, and they were entirely accurate as a mill measurement tool. So that gives me at least confidence in using this reticle for ranging purposes. If you have made it this far, then you have made it to the summative assessment at the end of the review. So what I'm going to do is talk a bit through this rubric. This is an 11-point rubric that measures these 11 characteristics, or these 11 features along a 4-point scale, beginning at the bottom, unsatisfactory, all the way up to exceptional, and then it offers a kind of total grade out of the total score of 48. And so I'll talk through each of these features, and some of it will be review, some of it will kind of have a more comments will be more synthetic, trying to bring together a couple different things. So even if you've seen the chapters prior to this, I think you may find some of the comments here valuable. I did in general try to organize the rubric in such a way that the more concrete points of evaluation, like weight or reticle accuracy or aftermarket support, it kind of begins with the concrete and then moves toward maybe what is a little bit more subjective. Things like value, customer service, viewer fatigue, optical quality. There's a significant amount of subjectivity that goes into making some of these evaluations, and so it's likely that if members of the audience were to go through this same list, they would, especially on this bottom end, they would probably come up with some different numbers, and that's fine. So say so in the comments if you have different experiences. I'm happy to hear those. Or the other thing is that if there are some kind of features or aspects of the binoculars that you want me to evaluate, but that I haven't taken on here, then just say something in the comments and I will try my best to offer a score or to offer some reflections in the comments, so we can stay in conversation about this, and maybe some of you will be able to convince me to upgrade or downgrade some of these scores. In any case, let's begin with weight. Let me back up. Let me say one more thing.
especially about exceptional. So I was a professor in my previous life, and I'm very familiar with kind of the phenomenon of grade inflation. And I want to say that I attempt to avoid that as much as possible. If I give an excellent score, I truly mean, wow, this is excellent. Or another way of saying it is, if I give an exceptional score, sorry, it's exceptional, then these binoculars effectively made me say wow. And what goes into that kind of wow response is not just kind of the raw function, but also, or the kind of, the raw function like weight or optical quality, but also the price that you pay. So it's kind of if something is exceptional, it's exceptional within its class, is another way of saying that. So just to keep that in mind. All right, so let's begin with weight. I give this a score of good, and it truly, this is a comfortable pair of binoculars to carry. Not because the neck strap kind of sucks. It's not that great. It's cheap, but in terms of weight, it's very comfortable to carry for long periods of time. I've had them on for hours in different scenarios, marine scenarios, outdoor scenarios, etc. A lot of different situations, hunting, target shooting, whatever, and they're good. They're comfortable. The weight, I think, is reasonable. I don't give it the exceptional score because that really would belong to the Leupold BX2s, which are 23.10 ounces, whereas the Steiners are 26.7. I mean, in comparison to the others, 26.7, the Steiner 1042Rs, that's good. It's, I mean, no surprise, it's not as heavy as the the M1050Rs, which are those big, the military versions, the kind of iconic military versions. It's better than the Vortex Viper HDs, but Leupold really takes the prize home on this matter. They really have a lightweight pair of binoculars, and significantly lighter than the Steiners. Even still, the Steiners, I think, deserve a good reticle accuracy. I talked earlier about the measuring test that I did using the 3.6-inch grid squares. And the Steiner passes that with flying colors. At 100 yards, I measured each of the subtensions, and they were, or I should say, each of the 1 mil hash marks. I measured all of them. I even measured the hash marks that the manual claims are 1 milliradian, and they are all accurate, and to my mind that's exceptional, especially for a pair of binoculars that you potentially use for range finding or for measuring. It's important to know not just that a couple of the subtensions are accurate, but that the entire system is accurate. That's, to my mind, that compels me to give this an excellent score, because that's so important, and I think exceptional also because of the value, or the price that you pay for these, well under $1,000. Aftermarket support, it's so. It's good, I would say. Just to give one example, they do have a click lock based body harness system. I have not used it, and so I don't want to offer a judgment on whether this body harness system is good. But apart from that, that's really the only aftermarket support you're going to get. There is no ARD, the anti-reflective device, like on their the M1050s. They do have some ARDs that you can buy. I thought for a tactical pair of binoculars, not a bad idea to have some kind of anti-reflective addition that a person could buy. So I'd say this is good. It's certainly not exceptional. It doesn't make, when I look at their aftermarket support options, it doesn't make me say wow at all. But it's good. I think that's a fair score to offer it. Official warranty. Now, this is going to be really important, I think, for a lot of people. And Vortex, of course, has been kind of at the forefront of exceptional warranties. Their VIP warranty is sort of a standard setting, and I think maybe I'm wrong about the history here, but when I think about like Bushnell's no questions asked lifetime warranty,
which begin, notice effective January 1. As far as I can tell, in terms of the history, this is really a move to be competitive with companies like Vortex, which have really led the way. And I think Leupold too has a very good customer service and customer care. But Vortex has really, I think, pushed a lot of other companies to put down on paper what their warranties are, and to be very generous, to be honest, with their warranties. And so Steiner has their heritage warranty, which is for items manufactured since 2014. And so that's really more for their newer products, right? They don't go beyond back earlier than that. And it does. So, I was a little bit torn here between exceptional and good, because you'll note that this heritage warranty excludes electronic components, which are covered by a 3-year warranty. Okay, so Vortex does not have that little caveat. This applies to their red dots, rangefinders, in other words, to electronic devices. Steiner won't go that far. I think, the reason I don't knock the official warranty here down to good is because it would not apply at all to this pair of binoculars, right? The 1042Rs have no electronic components, so they would fully and completely be covered under this heritage warranty. So maybe I was too generous there, I'm not sure. In general, though, for the 1042Rs, I think the coverage that they would get warranty-wise would be comparable to the Vortex or to the Bushnells. I think maybe if I ever had to send them in, I might revise this based on customer service experience, but I think just on paper, the warranty is solid and basically on par with what you would find from Vortex and Bushnell. Construction and durability, let me say something about, let me start with the why I think they're good, why they deserve a good and probably exceptional, but we'll see. The rubber housing and the construction on the Steiner, the way they feel in hand, it feels very durable. I've had these in a whole range of environments where they've been bumped around and kind of dropped and bumped against different things. And the rubber housing seems to be very, very solid. Of course, we'll have to wait for kind of the longer term assessment, over a couple year period. How do they hold up over multiple hunting seasons, competitions, the whole range of uses that you might have for these. But for now, I'd say they certainly deserve a good. The question mark comes into play for me with the click lock system. Now, you'll remember, if you saw the earlier part of the video, click lock system has to do with that, see that little wedge right there, and the click lock system is a plastic insert that goes in here and can come out by simply, you have to push pretty hard on this area, and then they will release. Now, I haven't had these long enough to where I feel comfortable making assessment about whether that plastic system is going to be durable. I don't think it would be fair for me to say that it is a weak point. That's why I say it's possibly a weak point. I just need more time to evaluate it. I kind of question how durable those are going to be, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and maybe some of you have some testimony to offer that would contradict my skepticism, and if so, please offer it. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I just thought, all the Steiner products that I've had, my military 5-25, these binoculars, others that I've handled, Steiner has this reputation for just, these things are built to last and to be abused in many ways. And this click lock system, I think, I question whether it respects that tradition. We'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong, but I give it a good nonetheless, because I think the housing and they seem to be very solidly built. Ergonomics, they get a good to my mind. And let me tell you why they don't get it let me begin by saying what I think is really good. The kind of aggressive
grip here along the sides, and then also on these focus points here and here. It feels great in hand, both with gloves on. I haven't tried them with winter gloves on because I used to live in Minnesota, but I don't live there anymore, and so I haven't really had need to put on huge, thick winter gloves. But I've had on some kind of moderately cold winter or moderately cold gloves on, and these feel great with gloves on. In hand they feel very secure in the hand. At no point do I kind of wonder if they're going to slip out. The only kind of strange feature that I'm just seeing if I can find a picture of it. Okay, yeah. The only I guess small critique I have about the ergonomics has to do with these caps, which are also attached by click lock, but the caps, they're rubberized, very durable. Okay, they are very, very, this is not like some cheap Butler Creek feeling caps. These are very durable, a thick rubber. I think that's all awesome. Here's the drawback. These covers don't have any sort of what's the terminology that I used here? There's nothing that you can grip on them in order to pull them off. You actually have to dig your fingernail into the seam, or so I guess you could say the kind of space between the caps and the body of the binoculars themselves. You have to dig your nail in there just to get them out. Now, at first I thought, oh wow, over time this might cause damage, to the housing or to the rubberized armor around the binoculars. It has not. The rubber is very, very resilient and durable, so that concern has not borne itself out. But that's just a kind of strange ergonomic feature. Maybe that won't bother you. I understand, to kind of give the benefit of the doubt, I understand why you wouldn't necessarily want to have a little tag, a kind of rubberized tag on the top where you would just sort of flip, you could just grab that little tag and pull it down. I understand that having that could make the caps accidentally open, when you wouldn't want them to, like when you're pulling them out of your bag, that a little rubberized tab could catch on something. Okay, I totally get that. And so I think they compromised and went with a system without a tab, and it has its disadvantages. It also has some advantages. So that's kind of a minor issue to me, but I have found it to be mildly annoying that I have to dig my fingernails in there, because they do fit pretty tightly, which is good, but also requires a little bit of force to kind of dig your nails in there. And I still, I guess, have some concerns that over the long term, it might result in damage to the rubber housing, or maybe after they've been in the sun for such a long time, maybe 5-10 years, maybe it will start to chip away at that rubberized housing. I don't know. Again, that's a long-term concern, but overall I'd say the ergonomics are really good in terms of just gripping them, holding on to them, and holding on to them, and kind of keeping them steady in your hand. That's good. I won't give them an exceptional because I think there are some concerns around those caps. Okay, optical quality. I'm not going to summarize all of the 3 tests that I did. The test in broad daylight for optical clarity and mirage, the test in low daylight for light transmission and optical clarity, and then finally those are the 2. The third test had to do with the reticle, and so I already talked about that. But I think they absolutely deserve the exceptional rating, and this glass is a testament to the Schott Factory in northern Bavaria. Awesome. The glass really makes me say wow. And you may remember that I tested the Steiners against the Swarovski SLCs, which those are 15 power. It's not Swarovski's highest end glass. It's sort of their second to the top. I think they call the highest end that they currently have the EL. The SLCs are really still very excellent, very expensive. Still, MSRP are well over $2,000, but it's really great glass. And in many respects, in terms of seeing detail in low light, these Steiners are every bit as effective as the Swarovskis. I'd say they're beat by the Leica GeoVid HDs. The Leica glass is stunning, and allowed me to see a little, just maybe 1 or 2 steps, or 1 or 2 degrees above, or 1 or 2 degrees more detail in low light objects and in daylight objects than the Steiners did, but it was very, very minor. And I think in field conditions, when you're looking at animals or whatever, or at targets, it would be you have to look pretty hard. I honestly had to, I ran these comparison tests over several hours, and it took me a while to notice the superiority of the Leica glass, superior to the Swarovski, superior to the Steiner. With that said, the Steiners make me say, wow, especially on light transmission. I thought the light transmission in the low light conditions was better on the Steiners than it was on the Leicas, and was comparable to the Swarovski. So I think these really shine. The 1042R binoculars really shine in the area of optical clarity, optical quality. Viewer fatigue. This is something I didn't do a separate test on this, but so it's a bit subjective what I'm going to say here, and I think viewer fatigue probably may vary person to person, depending on whether a person wears glasses, or probably a whole different range of things. A person's the health of their vision, I'm not sure, but I just know that when I spend a full day glassing for animals behind a cheaper pair of binoculars, like those like a budget pair like those Tasco Futuras, my eyes get tired really quickly, especially toward the end of the day and you've been glassing a lot. You put your eyes behind those cheaper ones, and they just have to work harder. I don't know all the biology behind that. I just know the experience that I have, that when I'm behind a cheaper pair of binoculars, my eyes feel like they work harder and they're more tired. I do not have that experience with these Steiners, and I've been behind them quite a bit for over the last couple of months. I do not experience viewer fatigue. I mean, I'm sure if I really pushed it, I eventually would. But if I, in a set of maybe 30 minutes of glassing, I really don't feel fatigued by looking through them. So I think that's a testament to, again, that's kind of tied into the optical quality issue. But I think just a great testament. It's similar to the Swarovskis and the Leicas. I don't experience any viewer fatigue when I look through those, and so I think that puts these Steiners in a class similar to the Swarovskis and the Leicas. Okay, price competitiveness. I'd say it's good. Now, let me go back to the comparison chart here. MSRP $747. Okay, so it's not as low as the Leopolds. It's not as high as the military Steiners, and it's also not as high as the Vortex Vipers. I got really lucky on the pricing here. I think I told you all this, that I got a quote-unquote used kind of open box pair on Amazon warehouse deals, and I got these, I think, for $350. So when I saw that price, I just had to grab it. And so, not everybody can expect that kind of pricing, but I got lucky and I got it. And, so when I compare these 747, I think, to my mind, it's competitive. It's a good price. It's not the best, but it is competitive. And especially when you consider kind of the larger suite of features that you're getting. Customer service, I'd say it's good. And what am I basing that off of? I've made 2 inquiries to Steiner about these binoculars, one of which was answered relatively quickly, one of which was completely ignored, and I can actually show those to you. All of the inquiries I made were digital like this. So let's see. Here's the first one. I think I showed you all this before. I said just a month ago, excellent set of binoculars, been using for a month or so and love them. Where's the glass made, right? So I asked them about the glass. And this person, Steiner Optics 3, 20 days ago, answers my question. Helpful? Yes, it absolutely was. Now, I asked them another question. This is actually me, just with a different name. Love the binoculars. Is there an ARD, anti-reflective device, available? I cannot seem to find one. 0 answers to that, and that was 2 months ago. So, I mean, maybe they don't want to answer it because it's negative. I'm not really sure. I mean, it's a little bit hard to tell. But they were it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of responsiveness, and I know that it's probably not fair to evaluate their customer service solely on those 2 items, but it's all I had to go on. I suppose I could have factored in the fact that I've had to work with them on my Steiner military scope, and their customer service was pretty good, not fantastic. When I was working with the Steiner military, I had some problem with the turret actually seized up. And prior to that, I was having problems with the 0 stop function, and so I probably had to call them 6 times because they would give me different answers when I would ask about how to set the 0 because the instructions they gave me were not working, and there was apparently a kind of problem with the instructions not being true to the actual function of the 0 stop. So I had to call multiple times and had them talk me through the 0 stop function, and eventually, after getting multiple different answers and making multiple attempts to reset the 0 stop, it actually seized up completely. So I had to send the scope in. And so the customer service, overall, my experience with them has been okay, based solely on my interactions around the 1042R. I give it a good. Maybe I should have given it mediocre. It's somewhere in between those 2, but I kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt here. Gave them a good rating. Now let's go to value. Last category. I think the value is exceptional, and I think that is really, really well deserved. These 1042Rs have frankly been surprisingly, just the surprisingly effective, valuable piece of equipment in my array of long range shooting and hunting equipment. I really have grown to love them. It didn't take me long to love them. I knew and trusted the company, but then when I saw sort of the MSRP, and I was a little bit skeptical, but I entered in, with trust for the company, but also with some skepticism about how they could be priced so well. How they could be, priced at $747, and I wondered, I frankly kind of wondered if the optical clarity and optical quality would be on the level of my Steiner military, which is amazing. The glass on that Steiner military scope is just fantastic, and so I questioned, what could I really expect? I've been won over in terms of its value. I think it has very high value, exceptional value, and I think those who are looking for a Milliradian scope, Milliradian binoculars, you will not be disappointed with these. There are a couple little quibbles I have with them, some potential long-term concerns I have, but in general, I think these are a high-value item. I think a person should, there are some other competitors, right, to consider, and so a person would just need to look at these features and say, okay, what's most valuable to you? Is it most valuable that you have the lightest possible pair of Milliradian binoculars? Well, in that case, you might consider the Leupold. Do you want the extremely high quality glass? I'd say, I haven't looked through these other ones, but I think you can rest assured that you're going to have a great optical experience with the Steiners. Is field of view exceptionally important for you? In which case, the Steiners, at least of these 3, would be tops, with the Steiner M1050 being the absolute best. Huge field of view. and then maybe you'd have to consider the kind of reticle, because the Steiners have one reticle which is really just looks like a rifle scope reticle, whereas the Viper HDs and Leopolds have kind of distinctly different reticles that aren't that don't replicate at all what you'd see in a rifle scope, or not. They really don't replicate closely what you'd see in a rifle scope. So those are the kinds of decisions you'd have to make. But I would say, if you're in the market for binoculars with a Milliradian reticle, you will have very few complaints with the Steiners. I am looking forward to using these for years to come. And if anything comes up in the future, or problems, or maybe I discover some remarkable feature that I don't mention here, then I'd be happy to update it. But in general, this gets a high rating for me, really just under an A, and it's very, it's likely that if these long-term concerns end up, being addressed in a positive way, that this could very easily bump this up into the 90% range we'd see, and that might, change also with customer service experience, etc. Thank you all so much for watching. I know it's a long review. Hopefully it's helpful for those of you who are looking at purchasing these, and make sure to subscribe so that you can watch reviews in the future. Thanks.